Welcome to CBJ in 30, presented by Pedialyte. Coming up today, I'm going to talk with Aaron Portzline from The Athletic. We'll give you a complete breakdown of the Blue Jackets, where they are, where they're going, and what they might be before next season even starts. The Blue Jackets just had a big weekend. They went 1-1. They got a win at home against the Vancouver Canucks, and what a game that was. You know, I had just spent about 2 weeks telling people the days of scoring 6 and 7 goals are over. It's not going to happen. It's playoff time. Everybody's locked down. And lo and behold, the Blue Jackets come out last Friday night, and they fall behind the Vancouver Canucks 3-0 in the first period. It looks like all is lost, but it was only beginning, because the Blue Jackets were able to come all the way back. They tied the game at 3. They got down 5-3. They came back, tied it at 5, took a 6-5 lead, and then gave up that lead. Eventually won in a shootout by the score of 7-6. Those games don't happen at this time of the year very often. Hardly ever, as a matter of fact. But it did happen. And the Blue Jackets got the 2 points. And they were 2 much-needed points, because just a few days before, they had snapped a 6-game losing streak. And so they had points in back-to-back games with back-to-back shootout wins. But then they had to go into Ottawa the very next night and take on the Senators. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, the Blue Jackets and the Senators weren't separated by that many points. Blue Jackets were close to catching up with them, but Ottawa went on a winning streak, and they opened up the gap just a bit. But the Blue Jackets went into Ottawa on Saturday, and they fell behind 1-0. But Boone Jenner quickly came back and got a goal. Jenner has been red hot. He had 2 goals in the game the night before. Got it back to a 1-1 game. Unfortunately, Ottawa scored the next 2. They had that 3-1 lead into the third period when Kirill Marchenko picked up his 28th of the year to make it a 1-goal game. But that's all the closer the Blue Jackets could get. So they lose in that one. And then when you combine that with a couple of other factors, like the Rangers winning on the same night and then the Montreal Canadiens winning the next day, the Blue Jackets are back out of a wild card spot on the outside looking in. But again, just a couple of points out of the playoff picture. And not only that, the Rangers and the Canadiens have both played more games than the Blue Jackets, which means that you still have control of your destiny. But you've got to win. And the Blue Jackets have a big week coming up this week. 4 games. 2 of those games going to be at Nationwide Arena, and then 2 on the road with another back-to-back set in Canada this weekend. I'll tell you about all of that a little bit later in the show. But coming up next, Aaron Portzline will sit down with me. He covers the Blue Jackets for The Athletic, and we'll talk about what a magical season this has been as CBJ in 30, presented by Pedialyte, continues.
Here are 5 reasons to buy your Blue Jackets ticket plans for the 25-26 season. 1. Choose the games you just gotta see. 2. Plans start at just 11 games. 3. Flexible payment plans. 4. Bonus tickets for friends and family. And 5. Priority access to Stanley Cup playoff tickets. The time to act is now. Visit BlueJackets.com/tickets.
Welcome back to CBJ in 30, presented by Pedialyte. I'm Bob McElligott, and I'm very pleased right now to be joined by Aaron Portzline, who covers the Blue Jackets beat for The Athletic. Aaron, first of all, I want to start by saying thank you for doing this, and it is so great to have you back here in great health, being at the rink every day, being able to take selected road trips. For those of you that don't know, Aaron had to undergo a kidney transplant. Actually, that kidney came from someone right here on the Blue Jackets communications staff, and Lindy Knoll. So Aaron is back to 100%, right? You're close to 100.
I don't know if I've ever been 100%, Bob. I'm close to where I was before, though. Thank you for the kind words. Thanks. I can't say thank you enough, obviously, to Lindy Knoll, but also the Blue Jackets fan base who've been great. It's wonderful to be back, full of energy, and it's been a fun season to come back to.
I wanted to talk to you today because you've been here since the outset of this team, and you have seen everything. You have written about everything with this team. But this season in particular, with what happened starting in the summer and where this team is right now going into the final couple of weeks, as we record this, the Blue Jackets are sitting just outside a playoff spot but have an avenue to get into the postseason. What has been different about this season to you, and just the things that have occurred and how this team, this particular group, has developed?
Well, it's a great question. It's a big question too. To me, what's really made this special, and it's ironic because, as you said, it started with such tragedy and sadness, but the response to that has been powerful, beautiful, impressive, all of those things. I think that we've seen a team, it's bigger than hockey, a team that has really come together. I feel we're not in the room, obviously, but you can get a sense for just how tight that group is, the bond there. All of them, not 6 different cliques of 4 players or so, but it just feels like a really integrated, maybe as family-like as any team I've covered here. The only one that even comes close is probably that first year where they were all cast-offs and, guys that never got a shot, guys who barely got a shot, the whole expansion thing. This has felt, really special. And to see the young players, almost all of them really bloom in a way that I think people, when you undertake a retool or a roster reset, the hard part is that patience, and a lot of those guys have really started to pop this year. It sure looks like a really bright future. It looks like a pretty bright present. They've been a fun team to watch, too. So all of it together, I've thought about, is this more like 08, 09, the first year they made the playoffs? Is it like 16, 17 when they really surprised some people? I think it's unique. I think it stands on its own in a very, very special way.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And the other thing that I can't help going back to and thinking about is Sean Monahan was signed by this team, an extremely close friend of Johnny Gaudreau, a former teammate in Calgary of Johnny's. He came here to be a Blue Jacket and to play with Johnny Gaudreau once again.
Yep.
And I just wonder, you just talked about how everything has unfolded and how tight this group has become through tragedy. I wonder if it would have been the same without Sean Monahan. I know it still would have been, they still would have been tight, but it's almost to me like he's that bridge, if you will, in some ways.
Sure.
Even though he wasn't a part of this team until this summer, he still brings it all together.
Yeah, he is such an impressive guy, like in so many different ways. And all I've ever heard about him from people who have been privileged to cover him is that, like, he is quietly a wonderful player. Like, I think some of the best aspects of his game you have to really pay close attention to really, really appreciate. There's the points and the skill and all that stuff you can't miss. But he is such a smart, small play player. Players respect that. I think they respect his knowledge of the game. But the way that he carries himself, the way that he is strong, he is emotional, he's vulnerable, all of those things, I think that really, as a leader, that really opens up. I mean, it's probably somewhat out of line for me to say this, but I think for young guys who may have been going through grief the first time, to see someone so powerful and respected, to also be vulnerable and to feel and to show what he's feeling in front of the group, I think that sort of gave permission for some of them to do the same. And I don't think maybe they're as close as they've become if that wasn't shown by a leading player. I think Werenski's become a really powerful figure like that. Jenner, Goodbranson. I mean, quietly this team has really put together. We've talked about the youth a lot. It's valid, but the veterans here have become really, really impressive veteran players in lots of ways.
I agree with you. And the thing that is kind of, I don't know if I want to say funny about that, or maybe it's a little bit surprising to me how it's come together this year, because a lot of those guys we talked about have been here for a couple of seasons, right?
Yeah.
Boone Jenner's been here forever. Zach has been here ever since he got drafted. Goodbranson's been here for a couple of years now.
Right.
So they were all there and they were in place. And I always go back to what John Tortorella used to say, we want the players to take over the room.
Yeah.
And remember, for years, he said, they're not quite there yet. We still have to go in there. They're not quite there yet. And that's where I felt this team was going into this season.
Yeah, for sure.
And then all of a sudden, bam, not only are they there, but as you just described, they're there in a big way, and there's a lot of guys.
Yeah. And we haven't even mentioned Matthew Olivier, another guy that does a ton of talking. Listen, when Cole Sillinger, 21 years old, grabs the microphone, he might have been 20 at the time, grabs the microphone at the wake, the vigil, I should say, outside Nationwide Arena for Johnny Gaudreau. Wow, does that land, right? I mean, 20 years old, he felt he needed to say something, wanted to say something that he would regret if he didn't. That, to me, resonated. I think he is at God, this is his 4th year. He's just 21 years old. I think that kid I call him a kid. I think he's a leader in that room in his own way. And I think there have been, Van Riemsdyk signs up after the tragedy, right? Nobody knows where it's going. And he says, I'd like to be part of that. Guy who's from the same area. There are examples up and down the roster of people who have really stepped forward. Sometimes grief pushes you in that way that maybe you couldn't have seen previously. And I think a lot of guys felt that it was time for them to be more than what they have been, and I think we've seen that.
When you talk about Cole Sillinger, that is actually a great point. And if you're going to go back and start looking at where the growth begins for those young players, for him in particular, it started on that night when he grabbed that microphone. And then he just rolled that right into the way that he's playing. And look, he's always played well since he's been here, except that second season he hit that bump, but that's okay. But he's always gotten better and better. But, I think you're right. He has a voice there, too. And then when you have the Kent Johnsons and even the Kirill Marchenkos who haven't been here for very long, and you see that guy taking the step on and off the ice, then you got a green light.
Yeah. I mean, and I thought this before the season. I believe I even said it. This team's not going to finish last in the NHL, which many thought they would. I didn't think they were going to finish last in the Eastern Conference, and I said and caught some grief for this. I didn't think they were going to finish last in the Metro. Like, there was always more here than I think people realized. It just, if you had seen Cole Sillinger last year, you'd say, that's a pretty good player. If you'd seen Kent Johnson, not last year where he struggled and then got injured, but the year before, you'd say, this is 40 points as a 18-year-old in the NHL, 19-year-old in the NHL. Pretty impressive. If you saw how Adam Fantilli progressed from the beginning of last year to the midpoint when he got injured, really impressive for a young guy. So there was always potential here. The veterans, with Werenski, you wondered if he could stay healthy because that's a special player. I never thought this was the sort of vast, empty landscape that a lot of people did at the start of the season. I know you didn't either. But you wondered what the tragedy, I hate to keep coming back to that, but what that would do to this group, how they would respond to it. Honestly, you wondered if anybody, frankly, could give a damn about hockey. I know I could understand people not for a long time. I think Meredith Gaudreau and her incredible words at the funeral really gave them, I don't have a better phrase for it, but almost like emotional permission to care about hockey again. And then you see, as we've said, you just see all of it bloom with that purpose as sort of their North Star, and it's been awesome.
And I agree with everything you just said. And as you said, I didn't feel that they were going to be in those low spots either, because I felt that even last year this team should have been better, and it wasn't.
100%.
They were a victim of circumstance in many ways last year. But I said this year that this team should be challenging for the playoffs all the way to the end. If they don't make the playoffs, here they are.
Yeah.
But now here's the problem.
Right.
They have been in it or so close to it all
raised the
year
bar.
long.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Now you're like, boy, if you don't get in,
Right.
it feels like it feels as a fan as though it's empty, but it's really not. This season is a success right now, no matter how it ends.
Yeah, and I wrote that. I think this was my lead Sunday in the Sunday gathering on the website. If it ends like this and they're out of the playoffs, this still has been, and I know Dean Evison doesn't want to hear this, neither do the players, but this has been, I think, more than anybody could have expected out of this season. And I would think as a fan, you would be heartened by the fact that Kent Johnson looks like a point-a-game player. He's continuing to grow, of course, get stronger. Adam Fantilli looks like a number one center. Bob, how long has this franchise looked for a number one center? He's here and he wants to be here. I think he's 20. 20. And he's played number one center for about half of the season. To me, there's just there's so much. I think there's a lot of work to do in the back end. I think there's question marks still to fix in goal. But that group up front, if I'm Don Waddell, I'm not in the need first round draft picks, need talent. I'm in the figuring out how to work around that and really accentuate those guys you've got, because they've got some really special players.
With Aaron Portzline from The Athletic, and I'm glad you started to go to that direction because that's where I wanted to go. You know, you look at this team going into the trade deadline, and I said this group has earned the opportunity to not have any changes made to it.
Correct.
And they made very few changes. Christian Fisher was picked up off waivers from Detroit. Luke Cunnins acquired for a fourth-round pick from San Jose. But that's been it. And Cunnins played in all the games since he's gotten here. But it's also, hindsight is also 2020, right?
Sure.
So now you're looking how they've struggled since the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say, man, do you think maybe they did need something, even though they didn't think they needed anything? But then again, this is what they earned.
Well, it is, and I spoke with Don Waddell about this before, and I before the trade down, and I think he kept this in mind as well. Adam Fantilli needs to feel what this is, and he is. Kent Johnson needs to know what this time of season is like as a top six winger. These guys have not experienced that before. Marchenko hasn't. He scored a lot of goals. He has not played this time of year meaningful games. And the last thing I would want to do, honestly, I don't want to punt on this season, but I would not want to acquire a player that moves any of those young guys out of feeling this experience and tasting what this is. They may still get in. What an incredible experience that would be. It drove me crazy last year when this team went into Edmonton, or maybe Edmonton came here, either way, and Fantilli was moved from center to wing for a team that was miles out of the playoffs because they didn't want him to get exposed. And I'm thinking, this is when you do it. He needs to come out of this year knowing what Connor McDavid is.
Yeah, when you're last in the conference, it's okay to let him do
this
that,
is,
right?
Right. This is the time to do this. I felt like some of that was a wasted opportunity. This is an incredibly rich experience for these young players. And I think they're only going to be better for it. I would not have wanted to bring somebody in, even if the price was right, to push them away from that, because I think these guys are the future, and that needs to be kept in mind all the time.
And you can see it in these last couple of weeks. I mean, it has really tightened up on guys like Kent Johnson, Kirill Marchenko. You can see their frustration at times on the ice. And they're frustrated because there are two guys coming at them every time they touch the puck. All that room that you had in December and January, that's out the window right now.
Right.
But this is what you're talking about. They've got to learn to play through this.
Yes. Now they know. Now they're getting at least an idea of it. The one thing I'll say this, like, I feel like that Tampa game right after the outdoor game and the Florida game, I think those were the two eye-openers where I think they flew from Florida to New York going, oh my, like, what league is this? Because it felt worlds different. Like,
and
just
coming off
up.
an all-time high of taking the Red Wings,
100%.
sweeping a home and home, one of
TV.
those in front of almost 95,000 people, and now all of a sudden, punch in the gut.
Yes. Oh, the whole league downshifts right after at the start of March. And then they get to Madison Square Garden. It's like, oh, look at all this space. Put up 7, I think, that night. But the sense that I get, and I even ran the numbers, it's astounding. They're learning, I think, still to play their game. Right now, it feels like they're playing safe. They're playing in a way to not get exposed. They're competitive as heck. This is not about effort, but they're chasing everything right now. 9 games in a row, they've given up the first goal. You go back before this, and they scored first like more than any other team in the league. And now they cannot score first. I think, to me, that's what I'm looking for Tuesday against Nashville. Even if it's not score first, take an early lead, even if it's 2-1, and ride out a lead. It would just be good for this team to play with the lead, which they've not done. They've had the lead, I think, twice in the last 12 games. One time it was for 23 seconds, right?
Right.
So they've been competitive. They've hung in there. They're lucky, frankly, to have 7 points out of those 12 games, 3-8-1. But at some point they have to learn in this environment, this richer, more fiercely contested, defended games, to be more free and to be more themselves. without just kind of hanging on. They have to dictate. They haven't dictated in a while.
Have they forgotten safe as death?
Safe as death. Well, I was going to say he's in Philadelphia, but
No, he's not.
and he's not in
No.
Torts isn't. I wonder where he's going to land again. I don't think he's done.
No, I don't think he's done either. I think it'll happen.
Rooting for him.
When Don Waddell puts his stamp on this team, which I expect that he will this summer.
Yeah.
And you kind of alluded to this when you talked about the blue line and the goaltending. What kind of moves do you see him making to shore things up there? One of those moves might be made for him with Ivan Provorov being a free agent.
Correct.
He could leave. That could open a spot for you right there. But what direction do you think that he'll be looking toward here?
I'm curious to see what he brings in. I'm not privy, obviously, or wise enough to predict the names. Frankly, it doesn't feel like there's anything in the farm system defense-wise that's ready to step right in and play.
I think most of those guys are the guys that were drafted last year, right? The big defensemen that he drafted.
but there was
we're
some-
talking about a couple years down the road.
There's some even before that with Kuhlman's,
Yeah.
Svazil, Kanazko, those guys. Kuhlman's is injured. I got the sense he was dramatically better early this season than he had been his first two. But I don't think any of those guys right now, no one's giving up on them, obviously, but I don't think any of them are expected to be NHL guys as soon as next year. So it's probably going to come from outside the organization. I would be surprised, Bob, if they take both of those first-round draft picks. They may take one of them. I think the other one's going to be used to acquire a player. I think Don Waddell wants to be aggressive with that. I think he wants to be aggressive with his cap room. The cap is going up, so that's a relief for a lot of teams. But for some of these teams, it never goes up enough, as much as they like to spend. So, I'm curious to see. There were rumors. So it must have been 2019 when Marner's entry-level deal came up. And there were rumors that there were discussions with Columbus for an offer sheet. And I literally was in Finland when this broke, spending time for a feature story on Jarmo Kekalainen. I remember having lunch, and I said, hey, I got to ask you this. And he said, I thought we were going to talk about such and such, I don't want to talk about this. So I don't really exactly know where that went, but there were rumors that Columbus was talking to him. It's a reach, I'll grant you, but would the Blue Jackets be in on Mitch Marner this summer should he get to UFA? I think they've got money to spend, and they're willing to spend it. That doesn't fix the back end, of course, but it could make other pieces available for help on the back end. And I don't know what to make of that back end. Like, do you keep Fabro? Fabro's played pretty well with Werenski. I would, because I don't want to rebuild the entire right side of that. But
You
I like
would for the right price.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And I would think a guy who's claimed off waivers this year would be amenable to a deal with moderate term. I don't think you'd have to break the bank for Fabro. But quietly a really good player. It works well with Werenski. Some would say anyone can work well with Werenski. I think we know that to not be true, frankly. And that's not a comment on Werenski. That's just some guys have a hard time playing with skill. And I think we've seen that through the years here. But I think they've got to fix that second pair, especially if Provorov moves along. They got to find something. I just think it's kind of a murky setup once you get past the top two on the left side, Werenski and Matejchuk. I think there's a lot of things there to question and get an answer to.
Some Werenski and Matejchuk play together a little bit.
Yeah, right.
In Ottawa, and either one going to the other side, quite frankly. And, Zach Werenski, coming out of the Four Nations tournament, told me in here one day, I didn't mind playing on the right side. So I'm not saying that's going to happen by any means.
Right.
But coming out of the building, I said to Matejchuk, I said, you look pretty good with Zach. And he said, to your point, well, it's pretty easy to look good playing with a player like that. So don't know if that's going to happen anywhere down the line, but who knows?
Right. Coaches love that left, right.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. And they have not been able to have that this year. Look at some of the claims that Waddell's made off the waiver wire. Like, he's done well by that. It's amazing the players you can pluck off of that. Nashville's lost a few of them this year, but yeah, I think there's a lot of work back there. It's just hard to predict exactly where that's going to go.
All right, finally, in goal. There are three guys that have been here this year.
Yeah.
It's been Merzlikins, Tarasov, Greaves. Are all three back in this system next year?
I would say no. I get the sense that I don't know where it stands with Elvis. I think Elvis, by all accounts, anyone would agree, he's been dramatically better this year. And again, we're not privy to how things operate in the dressing room, but by all accounts, he's been a different player in there as well. The question that has to be asked is the number one goalie is better isn't what you're looking for. Good enough is what you're looking for. Is that position good enough for them to fix? Last summer, they felt as though the buyout on Merzlikins would be way too long. They felt like the contract was too big to trade. I wonder if either of those are different this summer. Has his play this year, again, dramatically better, been enough to convince them that maybe that's a guy you keep around? For some reason, I just get the sense that Tarasov is not going to be here. Jet Greaves has a one-way contract next year. That doesn't for sure mean he's going to be here, but I think it increases the likelihood a lot. I would have liked to see, and maybe it's not too late for this, I'd like to see Tarasov get regular playing time because I think he's a better goalie. I think he's been better of late. I'd like to see Greaves, who every time he comes up, he seems to play well. Let's see if one of those guys can take a run at this thing and hang on to the net and maybe be that sort of inspirational player down the stretch. Elvis has been, again, much, much better. But, boy, there were a couple goals in that Vancouver game you'd like to have back. And those are tough this time of year.
It would also probably be tough to make that change at this
100%.
time, right?
Yeah, it would.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm
Nope.
just saying, I mean, the implications of it,
Right.
and what does it do to a team, and what does it do to a guy that has been better, and he did. He did not like the Vancouver game at all, personally.
Yeah.
No
Well,
doubt.
that's a good sign, too.
Yeah.
Well, like, what if Tarasov throws a shutout in Ottawa? Should he start Tuesday? I mean,
Yes.
he didn't. This
I mean,
is all
yeah. I mean, yeah.
hypothetical.
To me, at this time of year, when you're down to 10,
Yeah.
11 games left, and you've got to win them all, whatever's
hottie.
going to make that happen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, we could have conversations about why is James Van Riemsdyk not in this lineup right now when you're goal starved.
I
right?
might be writing that.
Oh, really?
For tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. There you go.
I don't like it.
Look into the future, right?
That's the guy you play this time
Yeah,
of year.
it's he's got the experience and he's
100%.
got the numbers, but it's all how does he fit into the puzzle?
sure.
So that's the key to it. Aaron,
Easy
thank
for
you
us.
so much. Yeah, it's just so easy for us.
Easy for us.
Where I tell players all the time, where I sit, I could score 50.
Oh,
Okay,
right.
Because I see everything.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't do it. Like
Yeah.
I would never be able to have the talent to do it,
Right.
but I could see it.
Yeah, and if I'm wrong, nobody cares. If you're wrong, that's your job.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I appreciate you
My
being
pleasure,
here with
Bob.
me. And
Thanks.
again, great to have you back all the time, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
All
man.
right. Aaron Portzline from The Athletic. Stay tuned. I'll come back and wrap up this week's CBJ in 30, presented by Pedialyte right after this.
Here are 5 reasons to buy your Blue Jackets ticket plans for the 25-26 season. 1. Choose the games you just gotta see. 2. Plans start at just 11 games. 3. Flexible payment plans. 4. Bonus tickets for friends and family. And 5. Priority access to Stanley Cup playoff tickets. The time to act is now. Visit BlueJackets.com/tickets.
Well, it was great to talk to Aaron Portzline and get a little bit of insight, and I especially liked what he talked about when it comes to where this team is going and what changes might be made. And look, we're all hoping this team gets into the playoffs and makes some noise in the playoffs, but the fact of the matter is this team is now at a point where you can start talking about those things. You're now a good team again. You're now a team that should be in the playoffs. And if you don't get into the playoffs this year, what's it going to take to make sure you get over the hump next year? If you do get into the playoffs this year and don't win the Stanley Cup, what's it going to take so that you can go deeper into the playoffs and win a Stanley Cup next year, which is a great conversation to have. So I'm glad I was able to have that with Aaron. Big week for the Blue Jackets coming up. They've got 2 games at Nationwide Arena. Tuesday night, the Nashville Predators are here. I'll tell you, the Predators have had just a dreadful season. When Barry Trotz, their general manager, was putting together a team during the offseason and adding guys like Steven Stamkos, he was not imagining a team that wouldn't be in the playoff picture. But that's exactly what has happened to this team. It's been a very rough season. They've watched a lot of players come and go from that franchise. So the Blue Jackets maybe have an edge on paper, but look, you've got to play the game, right? So the Blue Jackets have got to bring their best against the Nashville Predators. Those are 2 points that are there on the table. They've got to have them at home. And then on Thursday, the Colorado Avalanche comes to town. That is never an easy task. And we saw Colorado earlier in the season. It was in the first trip of the season, as a matter of fact. Second game, the Blue Jackets won that game on the road, but Colorado is much different now in a couple of ways. First of all, Mikko Rantanen got traded a couple of weeks ago, and Martin Necas came in from the Carolina Hurricanes. That was a big deal about a month and a half ago, but it has set Colorado up to be a different team and a better team. And I'll tell you what else is different about them. They are gearing up for the playoffs, and they know how to get into the playoffs, how to win in the playoffs. Heck, a lot of guys on their roster have hoisted the Stanley Cup. So the Colorado Avalanche, that is going to be a big challenge for the Blue Jackets on Thursday night. It's also a very special night, Military Appreciation Night at Nationwide Arena. It's presented by Elk and Elk. The first 5,000 fans that come through the doors on Thursday will get a Blue Jackets camo hat, and there is a special military appreciation ticket package. If you purchase your ticket through that package, you can get a Blue Jackets camo jersey. All you have to do is go to bluejackets.com/military to find out more information about that. After the Blue Jackets play those 2 home games, it's back up north of the border, and they've got a back-to-back set. That starts with Toronto on Saturday, and then going back to Ottawa again for a game on Sunday. So another back-to-back set. Ottawa gets the Blue Jackets on the second half of the back-to-back. I'll tell you this. I like the way the Blue Jackets have played the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's not just this year. I think the last 2 years, 2 teams that match up in the speed department. The Blue Jackets have played well and have played confident hockey at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. So I look for them to do the very same in that one. So hopefully you can get yourself a win there and go into Ottawa and, catch them and pick up points. It's all about getting the points right now. That's what the Blue Jackets have to do. They control their destiny, and the way you control it with success is by winning games. So 4 of them this week, and we'll see what the Blue Jackets can pull off with 2 at home and 2 on the road. Once again, I'd like to thank Aaron Portzline from The Athletic for being here with me today, and that's going to do it for CBJ in 30, presented by Pedialyte. I'm Bob McElligott. So long.